Thanks, everyone. We're going to start this out by being millennials. So if I could get like some smiles. Oh, got a lot of sunshine. Perfect. So, like she said, my talk is building automation engineers from scratch. And my name is Jenny. Human interfacing is my absolute favorite thing. My pronouns are she and her. You're going to hear a ton about me later because that's one of my favorite things to talk about. Whoop, come on, slides. All right, my slides, there we go. Okay, so like she said, I have a couple of cats. You're gonna meet a lot of them during this presentation. For context, this is my darling Dante, and this is Dax Dumpling Private Eye. He's not a very good private eye, but you get what you can do. So what we're gonna talk about today, we're gonna talk about some assumptions that I'm gonna make for this talk. There's a few things that I'm just not going to go into because other people have done it better. We're going to talk about me, and then we're going to talk about setting expectations, a framework for success, and how we face challenges. Finally, we're going to talk about how we win. So you never start from zero. I apologize, my thing is not working. And I kind of need my notes. There we go. Okay, so you never start from zero. There's always going to be some assumptions that we take into these things. And the assumptions for this talk is that you've got a group of manual testers or are a manual tester interested in moving towards integrating automation as part of your practice. I'm going to assume you've got time and resources to apply to this adventure and that you may have some kind of support system in place. At least you've got some people willing to help. Finally, that you're willing to make a plan and execute on that plan. Time and resources is generally one of the biggest things. People are like, oh, I don't have time, I don't have resources. There's a ton of talks on that, so I'm not going to talk about it. So, my slides aren't working, my banter's not working again. So every tester is an SME in their field. Everyone is a subject matter expert in testing if they're a tester. Manual testing is also still extremely important. We're never going to be completely automated. We always need manual testers. Also, not everyone wants to be an automation engineer. Some people just want to integrate it as part of their practice, and some people just don't want to do it at all. Finally, my final assumption is that change is scary. Okay, oh, my advancer's working again. So, who am I? Let me talk to you a little bit about my history and where I'm coming from as part of this talk. When I was a baby QA, I was a manual tester. I love manual testing. There's nothing better to me than sitting down in front of something and just messing with it, trying to see, does it meet my expectations, does it not? I love it. A couple of jobs ago, my boss sat me down and said, you need to learn automation. And I said, yeah, no, I'm perfectly happy doing what I do. I don't need this in my life. And then I got laid off. Not because of that, just because. I moved to my next job and it was 90% manual. And I'm like, oh, there is a place for me as a purely manual tester. I did a little bit of automation, but not a lot. No one really pushed me towards it. And then I left that company to come to my current place, Willowtree. And when I applied for the job, they said, hey, we're looking for automation engineers. And I'm like, oh, totally, I'm totally an automation engineer. It wasn't, and I did admit that. I said, I want to move towards automation. This is a thing I want to do. I have some skills in it, but it's not something I've done regularly. I turned in my test project and was like, well, I'm never going to get another job in my life because I'm not an automation engineer. But I didn't. I ended up getting the Willowtree job, and they said, you've got some skills, but we want to make it better. We're going to support you in that, which is awesome. Then I got put on a project that was exclusively manual. No automation at all. And I was like, okay, I guess this is my life now. We're a client services company, and we had a break between statements of work, a break between the two pieces we were doing for the client. And I said, okay, look, we've got eight weeks. Let's see if I can create an automation suite in 8 weeks using the resources that I have. And that was pretty cool. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we did as part of that, but a lot about feelings and emotions, because feelings and emotions are kind of my thing. All right. So apparently I'm just going to be having issues with this today. Apologies, y'all. I think it keeps losing connection to my laptop. Here it goes. Okay, so first things first is expectations. Everyone's got expectations. It's kind of how we go through life. We love to assume things. We love to say, oh my gosh, why is this happening? Why is that happening? The first thing you want to do with expectations is get out in front of them. Address as many of them as you can, as many of the ones that are potentially kind of negative before you can even start thinking about automation. Once you've got those covered, that's when we can start talking about building automation engineers from scratch. The first one is perception of ability. This is my favorite one, and this is one that really resonates extremely hard with me. My entire career has been primarily manual. That's what I'm good at. I'm an expert. I'm so good at manual testing. You put me in front of anything and I can test the mess out of it. I'm so good at it. When I step into the automated engineer space, I don't have experience. I'm not an expert. What does that mean for me? Does that mean that my entire manual career is nothing? Does it mean I have to wipe the slate completely clean? I don't know. I've been in this career for years. I should be better than I am. I didn't realize I was supposed to know everything by my second rodeo. It seems like a super low number of rodeos. The adjustment here is to respect the manual. Manual testers are amazing. We have the mental model of the system in our brains. We know the paths users take. We can feel where something is a little sticky. And when you start applying that to automation, you start to get better automated tests. If you ask a manual tester, does a user do this, they can often tell you. And if a user doesn't do it, maybe we shouldn't put it in an automated test. Okay, we're just going to have issues with our slides forever. That's cool. One of my friends said, oh gosh, what if something bad happens to my slides? I'm like, don't worry, nothing bad ever happens. The second thing is to reset your mindset. Reset your thinking. Reset how you frame testing. Reset how you frame manual and how you frame automated testing. I actually don't like the phrase manual testing. I like the phrase human testing, because it's a thing a human is doing. A human should do the things humans are good at. Computers should do the things computers are good at. It hasn't caught on yet. Feel free to tweet it, bring it out, let it happen. Don't expect someone, as soon as they walk into the space of writing code, to be just as good as they are whenever they're doing manual testing. Expect a little resistance. Expect them to say, oh, but I was so good at this, and now I feel like I'm not good anymore. Everyone has these fantastic experiences as manual testers that make your automated test much more vibrant and rich. No one knows the system from a user's perspective like a manual tester, like someone who is hands on the keyboard running through user flows. And lose your fear of not being technical enough. This is one of my favorite quotes from Lisa Crispin and Janet Gregory, who are personal heroines of mine. I love them so much. The next thing is your perception of velocity. Velocity is a little bit silly, and I apologize. We're just going to keep doing this if they're not working. It's a very key metric sometimes, but when you're first starting out, your velocity isn't going to be as fast as someone else. Thanks, Officer Howard. The big thing that you have to remember, though, is that velocity is not objective. An objective view of velocity is very toxic. We know that if we look at a child and say, why aren't you like your sister? That's toxic and that's damaging to the child. So why would we do that to a professional that we have to work with? We should not compare people to each other. We need to compare people to where they came from. And if I, as a primarily manual tester, am stepping into the space of being an automated tester, then I am not going to be as someone who's been doing automation for 5 or 6 years. I have a lot of different viewpoints I can bring to it, but I'm probably not going to get as many PRs in as he will. And sometimes that means we don't meet our goals, which is totally fine, because That's how we define sprints. We figure out what our velocity is over time, and it changes. But just do not fall into the trap of comparison here. Next one is the perception of success. This is one of my personal favorites because who knows what success is? Success could be this, it could be that, and sometimes we just say, okay, you need to become an automation engineer. And we're like, okay, I'm gonna do that thing that you haven't told me what the success metrics are for. Yeah, we're just gonna keep doing this, okay. Apologies, y'all. This is apparently gonna be my life for the moment. Okay, so the adjustment here is to define your success metrics. It's gonna look like something a little bit different every week. It's gonna look like something different for every single person who is in your group. And these are some success metrics that we've actually used on my team. Everyone in the team put in a PR. I actually hold my iOS devs to this as well, because when you've got devs actually contributing to your automation code, it makes everybody feel like a whole team. It makes everyone feel really good. The golden path is automated is another one that other teams have used. And if you don't know the term golden path, it's basically the primary path through your application. So if you're using a movie app, it could be something like booking tickets. We can do X, Y, and Z. One of the things that we have worked with on my team is not everyone knows Swift and not everyone knows Java. So we'll say, okay, we want to be able to automate this type of test. And that's been really great. There are a certain number of tests. I don't love this metric because it's super easy to game. And that's a whole nother talk. But sometimes it can be really great to have a metric that says, hey, get X unit of work done. We got tests running in our CI thing. Super great. We actually got that and had a small party afterwards because it was such drama. Or something as simple as no one cried this week. Everyone felt emotionally taken care of. You'll find that I'm super into emotions this week. And that's also really important because sometimes whenever you see people doing a lot more than you can do, it's very frustrating, it's very upsetting. I say, oh, I'm an expert. I'm good at this. I've been doing QA for 15 years. Why is this guy straight out of college doing more than I am? I have to step back and say, okay, Josh is straight out of college. He went to college for coding. This is kind of his thing. And my thing is telling him why I think we're automating these different pieces. And that's super fun. Yeah, so define your success metrics is the adjustment here. Try not to just say, we're going to do this thing. Give people concrete goals to work for and give them something that's going to make them feel good, something they can make progress towards. Again, super into emotions, so I want to feel good at my job. I want to feel happy when I go and I want to feel supported. And remember that success can be individual as well as project-based. And this works extremely well with people that are just coming into automation because you can say, okay, our team's goal is to have 15 tests done. I expect Josh to do half of that, Lauren to do a third of that, and I expect Jenny to do one. But again, it's not because they're better, it's because we're at different points in our careers. Okay, so Dante would like to know, where do we even start? We start with, what do we know? This is really important because a lot of manual testers know a lot of things that they may not actually realize they know. Whenever you're moving into a different job, into a different career, a different position, you're always going to take your entire history with you. It is never going to be completely chopped off. You never start from zero. You never start from scratch. She says, naming her talk, building automation engineers from scratch. You always bring this with you, and it is so vital. If you've ever seen a developer who used to be a quality assurance professional, they're amazing. I love them. If you've ever seen a quality assurance professional that used to be a waitress, They're amazing because they have a human connection that a lot of people might not. So what do you know? Remember, this is a skill built on top of existing skills. Again, not starting from zero. Every skill you've ever had in your life, in your career, in anything, builds you up to be a better whatever you are. That could be project manager, it could be developer, it could be test engineer, it could be automation engineer. You do not drop your manual skill set to pick up automation. There is room enough in your brain, there is love enough in your heart to love both of these things, to hold both of these things inside of you. Everything in your past is a stepping stone to making automation better. Every bug you've found, every application you've used and have been so frustrated about, it is all there to make you a better person in the future. You know how to use tools and language. A manual tester knows so much more about language than anyone else in the software development lifecycle, except maybe a requirements manager. Because that's what we do, is we communicate, we talk about expectations, we talk about how things move through systems. And we have logic. We think about things, we reason through them, we can talk about them. Most of all, if a manual tester is moving into automation, they bring with themselves the ability to learn. That ability to learn will change your life. Accept it, embrace it, love it. And like I said before, testers hold the mental model of the system in their minds. This is something that Jasmine said at one of the first conferences I spoke at, and it has stuck with me so hard. Because if you talk to a developer, they'll talk to you about the feature that they're writing. If you talk to a project manager, they'll talk about the business relationship. If you talk to a tester, she's going to tell you about how the system can work as a whole. We hold the mental model of the system in our minds. All right, my slides are not advancing again. Sorry, y'all. I'll get this in a minute, I promise. There it goes. So that's what you know. What do you need to know? What does someone who's been a manual tester need to know to step out of that space and into the space of automation? Well, there's a lot, so bear with me. You need to learn how to code. You don't want to learn how to automate. They are not really different skill sets. There's just a different level of depth. But if you learn how to code, what you're doing is you are learning good software practices. You're going to make beautiful, clean things. Learn the software development lifecycle at your company. A lot of testers will be like, oh yeah, it's blah, 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 blah. Maybe. Talk to a developer. Ask them how they get code from their laptops to production. See what their vision of it is. Learn Git or whatever versioning tool your company uses. This is so non-trivial. I've sat with a half a dozen developers who all use Git completely differently. So that's very confusing for me personally, but we're working on it. This is something that I feel like we skip a lot. We're just like, well, it'll get up there somehow. But if you sit down and learn how to use Git, you're going to be able to dig yourself out of a lot of holes that you haven't even realized you've created. I learned about squashing the other day. Mind blown. And learn your IDE. These are, unless you're using like Notepad or something, your IDE has a lot of tools to help you be a better developer. And an automation engineer is a developer. Find someone that uses the same IDE as you and just sit down with them and absorb. It'll be so good. It's super fun. And remember, automation code is production code. There have been times in my career where people are like, oh, it's just test code. It doesn't matter. But you have a responsibility to yourself and your users and your coworkers to write clean, maintainable code that is treated just as seriously as application code. If you wouldn't do it in prod, don't do it in your test suite. Comments. Write it according to the style guide at your company. All of these things make your test code more readable, more beautiful, and it makes your developers more likely to help you. Because if you sit down with some ugly code, the first thing they're going to do is be like, tabs? Really? And you're going to spend about an hour arguing over tabs and spaces and never actually look at your PR. So, not that that's happened to me. Let's talk about your framework for success again. Learning, 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 learning. A lot of people learn the same. Some people learn differently. Find out your learning style and embrace it. If you don't learn by going to courses and taking coursework, don't do that. If you do learn, then there's a million out there that you can even get for free. The biggest thing, find a mentor. It doesn't have to be someone at your company. It can be someone external. It doesn't even have to necessarily be a developer, but I would highly recommend a developer. Mentors are amazing. If you find somebody that actually cares about your personal development as much as you do, then you can be anything. For me, in my speaking career, I've actually had a couple of mentors, and it is life-changing. I've made sure that all of my testers in my group have someone that they consider a mentor in development. Pair with devs and testers. We have this fun program that I call Automation Happy Fun Time. Every other day for 2 hours, so Monday, Wednesday, Friday the first week, Tuesday, Thursday the second week, we would have a dedicated block of automation time. This was a time for us to sit down and write or talk to each other, review PRs, do all this mess. And what I would do is pull in a subject matter expert from one of the areas we're looking at. I had our XCUI test guy come in, talk to us about page objects and how we were doing them wrong. I had our lead dev come in, and he was like, wow, so let me introduce you to the style guy. I had one of our newer engineers come in, and she sat down and she said, okay, here's the things that confused me about development at Willowtree. Let me help you. So amazing. Highly, highly recommend. So dedicated time for this has been amazing. We've actually stopped doing it recently because we've gotten to a point where we feel like we need it about once a week and not 2 to 3 times a week. But spending the time, it just feels so good. Example automation projects are fantastic. Some companies have them, some companies don't. You can also find them out in the wild. And sometimes you can find someone on Twitter who's like, I love Cypress. Let me sit down and talk to you about Cypress. And they'll show you some of the work they've done. Coursework, if that works for you. Games. I'm a huge proponent of games. One of the ones that I found at one of my previous companies is Ruby Warrior. And it's this little knight dude, and you give him little code commands in Ruby to do little tasks. And that taught me so much about how to code in a very practical way. Highly recommend. And remember, practice makes permanent. Make sure that however you're learning, you incorporate practice into it, but good, clean practice. This goes back to coding standards. It goes back to making sure that you're making beautiful, clean code. Whatever you're doing on a regular basis, you're going to train your body and your brain to do that. Okay, so challenges. Let's talk about some of the challenges that I personally faced leading a team into automation. No surprise, the first one is, getting deprioritized. Automation is the first to go, right? When computer. Automation is the first to go when things get weird. There's always going to be that one person that's like, yeah, but do we need it? And that's really difficult. So, I apologize. My slides are being a little bit naughty. Thanks for bearing with me on this. So, what you're going for is not trying to be a human of success, even though we just talked about success. You want to be a human of value. So whenever your stuff is getting deprioritized, the way to meet this challenge is to make automation invaluable. For my team personally, we have a regression light suite thing that our client has asked us to run before we get a release out. And we've agreed to it. We're like, okay, yeah, sure. It takes 3 hours. on 2 to 4 platforms. That's 3 hours each platform, not 3 hours altogether. It is non-trivial. We have about half of it automated. So we've actually gotten the runtime down to under an hour because we automated half the steps, the ones that are the worst. And this makes automation invaluable. If we suddenly didn't have our automation suite, every release would take almost a day longer to get out. Make automation invaluable. Celebrate any time it catches something or it saves you some time or anything like that. And remember, automation is just another tool. You wouldn't look at somebody and say, so we're going to deprioritize exploratory testing. We're going to deprioritize risk-based testing. We're going to deprioritize running the big nasty list of strings. No. You let your engineers, you let your testers determine what the best way to test this feature is. And that, a lot of times, is going to include at least an element of automation. So whenever someone says, hey, we're going to deprioritize automation, one of the ways to meet that is to say, this is a tool in my toolbox. If you start removing tools from my toolbox, I can no longer do my job well. The final challenge is my favorite, but I don't wanna. As my second favorite boss of all time said, tough luck. Okay, my slides are messing up again, apologies. One of the ways to meet this is to use a whole team approach. You are not working in isolation. Even if your automation engineers, your newly minted automation engineers feel like they are completely and totally alone, they are not. No one is just a tester. You're part of a team. There's several other people. There's someone giving you code to test. There's someone telling you why you're testing it. There's someone writing the paychecks. There are so many people involved in this. And if you can start making the whole team part of your automation efforts, part of your test efforts, then you are going to find so much more success. One of the things I am the most proud of on my team is that every single iOS dev and every single web dev has contributed in a major way to our automation suite. We have had people do something just as simple as, oh, the password's expired, so I called help desk, I got them fixed, I updated it in our automated suite. I put this new feature in and 3 of our tests stopped working. I fixed one of them, I didn't have time for the other 2, can you handle it? My favorite is that one of my test engineers sits next to one of the iOS engineers, and he'll lean over and he'll be like, hey, Garrison, can you look at this for me? And Garrison will slide right on over, and now they're pair programming. It teaches you so much. And one of the major things here is nurture that relationship. When you find someone who is willing to sit with you and pair program, nurture it. And as managers, find when these things are happening and nurture them. Positively reinforce it. Make space for these things to happen. This is another quote from Lisa Crispin, who I have such a girl crush on. I just love her to death. Automation is scary. Work to get your whole team engaged rather than specifically to become a test automation engineer. Find what gets everyone going, what gets them engaged in your life, in your practice, in your testing, because then it doesn't become your testing, it's our testing. It's our ability to create an incredible product that our users are just going to go nuts over. At my company, we call it delight. We want to delight our users, and a whole team approach lets everyone be bought into the delight. And finally, this is something that Steve Gibson said to me directly. Professional development means change. The world is changing around us. It is becoming something different every single day. Software testing is wildly different than it has been even a couple of years ago. I wouldn't recognize the situations I was in 10 years ago today. we are shorting ourselves. I am shorting myself by not fully embracing the role of automation in testing. I wish I could go back and say, Jenny, please, it's a tool in your toolbox. Embrace this, embrace change. Be someone that wants to be a better human. This is how you can do it. If we don't take advantage of the most recent advancements in software, in testing, in all of these things, we are absolutely, absolutely shorting ourselves. You wouldn't be here if you didn't believe in change. You wouldn't be here if you didn't want to know the most valid recent advancements. And your testers wouldn't be in places like this if they didn't want to get all of these advancements and just pull them in. Take advantage of that. Take advantage of people's adaptability, of their ability to learn, their ability to embrace change and bring it into themselves. This is what makes us amazing testers, and it's what makes us amazing automation engineers. Software development is never going to slow down. It is only going to get faster. It is never going to stop changing around us. It is only going to change more. This is one of the ways that we can rise to meet those challenges. This is one of the things that we can do to build automation engineers from scratch. Build people up. This is the plan. Set expectations. Respect your manual testing. Reset your mindset. Remember, velocity is not objective. Define those success metrics. After you've got those expectations handled, create your framework for success. What do you know? What do you need to know? How do you learn? And then face the challenges that are going to come up. Make automation invaluable. Remember, automation is just another tool in your vast toolbox. Embrace a whole team approach. And accept professional development means change. And that is how we build automation engineers from scratch. So we don't have much time for questions, but my question slide is super cute, so I want to show it anyway. Please find me afterwards. I would love to have a deeper conversation. I would love to hear your thoughts, your feelings. And if you're interested, I do have Dax and Dante stickers, and I would love to give you one. Thank you. Have a beautiful day.